Now to work with the rectangle and ellipse tool, let's create a new document from the splash screen. Once our new document's open, let's come up to the top under our tools. Let's select the first tool here, which is called the rectangle tool. With this selected, let's come down to the stage and let's click and drag. Once we let go and we have a rectangle on the stage, the first thing you'll notice is in the properties panel, we have all of these properties that are now lighting up based on this element that's selected on the stage. You'll also notice in the elements panel, we have a new div tag. Now, as we work inside of Edge Animate, the elements panel is always going to show us all of the elements that Edge will create once we publish out our project. Now with this selected on the stage, we can manipulate this very similar to the way we manipulate elements in tools like InDesign and Illustrator. I can come up here and grab the handles, for example, and change the height or the width. If I hold the Shift key and grab the corner, I can scale this up and down and keep its proportion. In the very top, let's come over here and assign a background color. So the two swatches up here next to the type tool control the border color and the background color. So the solid one controls background color. Let's come in here and just select a red color. Let's hit return. Next, for the border color, we can come in here and select a darker red and hit return. Now you won't see the border color being assigned because we need 3 properties in CSS in order to get a border. Now we can also assign color in the properties panel in the color section. So here you'll see the dark red that we already selected. Next is the style. Let's click this drop down and choose solid. Now after picking any one of the styles, Edge Animate will select at least a 1 pixel size. And let's come in here and just click and drag and bring this out a little bit. So I'll choose about 20 just to give you a sense on the stage of what this is going to look like. And now with these styles applied, we can do some additional transformations. In the transform section here, we can do things like skew the object. We can even rotate this. And we can even come in here and change the origin point, which is basically the registration point of where all of the transformations are going to hinge from based on this object. So if I come in here and rotate this now, for example, this will rotate around this new origin point. Now to work with the rounded rectangle tool, let's delete the rectangle we have on the stage. Let's come up here to the tools and select the rounded rectangle tool. Let's click and drag. You'll notice that it remembers the last properties that we assigned to our rectangle tool, but you'll notice that we have rounded corners now on the edges. If we come over to the properties panel and open up the corners section, you'll see that what the rounded rectangle tool did is basically assign border radiuses to all 4 corners. If we look in the elements panel here, we see we just have a div tag again. So there's really no difference between the rectangle tool and the rounded rectangle tool, with the exception that the rounded rectangle tool automatically assigns a border radius. To modify these, we can come down to the border radius, click and drag, and change this. So if I bring this up to about 70 or 80, we can see the rounded corners here being affected much stronger than the default, which is 10. Now the number 1 here indicates that this property here is affecting all of the corners at the same time, or representing that 1 border radius property is being assigned to all 4 corners. If we come down here and click number 4, we can specify individual corners to change. So I can come over here, for example, and change the upper right corner to be 0. And on the stage, we can see that the upper right corner has no border radius, whereas the other 3 have the radius applied. To take this even further, we can choose 8 and get the properties for both top and bottom for each one of the individual corners. So under 58 here for the upper left, let's change the top property. Let's bring this up a lot higher. And let's bring the other side much lower. So again, you can see that the corner here is being divided by top and bottom for the upper left radius. And if you want to come back and reset all of these, come back, choose number 1. Let's come in here and type a 0, then hit return. Now the other thing you'll notice is these little corners here are actually buttons inside of the corners area. So if I come over here and extend this up to about 20, you'll see the rounded corner again on all 4 sides, but then I can deactivate the upper left-hand corner. I can also deactivate any of the other corners, so I'll do the bottom right as well. So now you'll see that the bottom right and upper left have square corners, where the bottom left and top right have rounded corners. And if we come over here to the 4 section, what's basically happening here, it's taking that 20 pixel value and assigning it to the upper left and bottom right corners. Let's come up to the stage, let's delete this, and let's come over to the ellipse tool. Same thing, select the ellipse tool, let's click and drag. I'm going to hold the Shift key to conform this to a perfect circle. And when I let go, again, in the elements panel here, we just have a div, but in the corners area here, we can see that the measurement has changed. This little button over here changes between pixels and percent. So notice that we have a 1 property here, which means 1 value for all 4 corners, and they're being assigned 50%. That's going to give us that perfect circle. If we come in here and change this to pixels, we'll see that this is 112, but 112 is based on the size of this object. If I come up here and change the size and increase this, you'll see that 112 is an actual pixel value. Now if I come up here and scale this, you'll see that this doesn't scale as a perfect circle. 112 is an absolute measurement value as opposed to the actual size of the overall element. If we come back to the corners property, let's change this back to percent, and let's change this back to 50 and hit return. We'll get our perfect circle again. Now I can come up here and scale this, and with all 4 corners being assigned 50% property on the border radius, we'll always have a perfect circle. Now one tool that seems to be missing is the line tool. Now we don't have lines in CSS, but we can create a line using a div element. So let's come up to this stage. Let's delete the circle. Let's come over, let's grab our rectangle tool. Let's click and drag. Now in order to make a rule, let's come over to the properties panel. Under color, for style, for the border, let's come in here and select none. This will automatically negate the pixel size. We can come in here and set this to 0 also if you want. And then let's come up to the position and size section here. Let's unlink the height and width proportions. Let's come over here to height and let's put in 1 pixel and hit return. Now if we click away to unselect this, you can see that we have a 1 pixel rule on this stage. Now we can manipulate this the same way we can manipulate any div element. We can come over here and rotate this, for example. Now in order to change the length, we don't have any endpoints like we would have in a tool like Illustrator. What we can do is come over here and change the width. So if I decrease the width here, for example, you'll see that the rule will now get a lot shorter. So working with rules this way is a little bit different, again, than a tool like Illustrator or any other vector drawing tool, but we can create the illusion of rules by using the div elements and setting a height of 1 pixel.